And hello to everybody on this dark and rather wet evening. We are absolutely delighted to have you with us. Ooh, and here you all are. So I will make a start. My name is Caroline Lucas, and I'm an advisor to the wonderful Climate Courage campaign, Climate Courage Schools campaign, which in turn is an initiative of the Climate Majority Project. Welcome to what I think is going to be a really exciting event, which we have been planning for a very long time.
Caroline, you're muted.
Someone keeps muting me, which is very distracting. I don't know why that's happening. Hopefully I am not muted now. I don't know how long ago you lost me, but can you hear me now? Okay, yeah, good. I was simply saying that we are going to launch the new Hardest Lesson film, and you'll be seeing that in just a second. And we're also going to be showcasing some of the pioneering case studies from schools and from a teacher training institution that are already inspiring climate courage in the classrooms. And the purpose of the event really is, first of all, to help us to really understand what it feels like to be in the shoes of a teacher who has to deliver climate education in the classroom and deal with the very difficult emotions that that can bring up in young people, quite understandably so. Second, it's an opportunity to understand what the latest research is telling us about links between the climate crisis and mental health. And third, it's a really great opportunity to hear direct from some of the inspiring school leaders and teachers who are already trying to demonstrate that climate courage in the classroom in an education system that frankly currently simply isn't set up to support this. And so Climate Courage campaign will be campaigning for changes so that the education system does support it. One bit of housekeeping is, as you've probably noticed, that the event is being recorded, so I hope that's okay. So let me just remind everybody to stay muted, and then I'm going to hand over for the film to start. The film is called The Hardest Lesson. It's a new campaign film. It stars Thomas Flynn. It's directed by Bonnie McRae, who I think might be in the audience. So we'd love to know that in a second if she could put that in the chat. But let us now watch the film. Thanks.
Right, carbon dioxide. Where does it mostly come from? Let's just keep it simple for now. Any ideas? Kai, all 4 feet on the floor. How many times, mate?
But, sir, I don't get it.
It's easy. We don't have a future.
It's not as simple as that. What else?
Factories?
Good start. Let's wake up, come on.
Like, literally everything. My dad says we can't do anything about it.
Libby, there's lots of things that we can do. Lots of small changes we can all make.
When I'm older, I really want to go to uni and become a midwife.
100-metre sprinter.
I want to be an influencer.
Doctor.
All is the spark of life passed on.
Libby, earphones out, please.
I actually do care about climate change.
Let's hear about it, not the music. Out.
No, this one's my favourite.
Yeah, and what about her private jet?
Oh my god, it's not her fault.
Guys, yo, this is Joe. Look at this.
My shoes! My shoes!
Kai, enough. Guys, please, phones away now.
Sir, when was science this fun?
Ezra, I can still see your phone.
Midwife.
100-metre sprinter.
Be an influencer.
Doctor.
What's the point? Nobody cares.
Eyes on me, please.
People do care.
Sir, I'm scared.
Yeah. It is scary. So let's talk about it. Together.
Well, I was going to ask you how that film made you feel. How did it land with you? And already some people are using emojis to kind of tell us that. But if you could take a moment, maybe just to drop a word or a phrase in the chat, just kind of reflecting what that film brought up for you. Powerful, tears, reality, urgent, impactful, scary, realistic, challenging, heartbreaking, distracted, insanity, relief in a way. I mean, we can just all see these words, but I think it demonstrates that it is an incredibly hard-hitting film, and we need to get it seen, I think, as widely as possible. So thank you for the responses you're putting in the chat. Yeah, let's talk, honesty, inspiring, scary, courageous. We're going to hear two very brief initial responses to the film, one from a teacher and one from a student. So I wonder, could I invite Sarah Dukes to share a few reflections, first of all? She is sustainability lead at the Chase Secondary School in Malvern, and we're just going to hear a couple of moments from Sarah.
So I'm coming at it from a slightly different angle because I'm an English teacher, so I don't strictly have to teach about the climate crisis, but I'm coming at it from a point of view where, you know, that feeling of panic and that feeling of overwhelm and the feeling of fear, you know, the fact that it's terrifying, that's shown so brilliantly in the film, is, I think, something that we all need to have courage to embrace. And I feel that you know, it's our moral obligation to use the flexibility of the curriculum and embed it in as many opportunities as we can. And it just deeply resonates, I think. I contacted a geography teacher today, Jo Cook at our school, and she said, she showed her year 10 actually as well, and they were all deeply moved by the film. And Jo, the geography teacher, we were talking about how actually we want it to be, the film shows that stark reality kind of butting up against all of those distractions beautifully, but we want to move the distractions aside, and we want to be able to have the courage to kind of put it at the forefront where it deserves. And she feels that even in geography now, it's all too often kind of pushed to the side or pushed down the agenda. And we're not given the space to discuss these really important issues that we desperately need to talk about with the students. So yeah, different angle, but it deeply resonates with the film, and it gives me chills when I watch it, and it's terrifying and it's overwhelming. And the fact that he ends with the boat, the paper boat at the end, really gets me. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Sarah, and it's fantastic to hear that you're bringing that into English teaching as well. As you say, I think it's right across the board. This needs to be addressed. It really does. We're going to hear now from Anton Poon. We're delighted to have Anton with us. He is a youth advisor to a research project which is looking at climate education and mental health, about which we'll hear more later, as well as being a final year A-level student. So Anton, we'd love to hear your thoughts.
I found that the film really resonates with me as a student when thinking about just how big and overwhelming the climate crisis is. As I watched it, the film kept feeling more and more overwhelming until, of course, the solution was proposed. Talking about things, I found it feels so chaotic, and I can relate to the feeling of being in a class who mostly act like they don't care, but as soon as the sheer scale of it becomes apparent, it's all panic and fear. Whenever I've tried to discuss the issue with others, they all seem to believe that nothing can be done, so they shouldn't do anything. So this film, I feel, can help get over that idea and help people start to have more conversations. I also love the portrayal of the teacher as being just as overwhelmed as the students, if not more so, since teachers bear the weight of the climate crisis itself, the pressure of teaching the lesson and of dealing with the students. It shows that we are all in it together, and while sometimes it can feel like we're on our own, we all experience it and we can work together to manage the feelings and eventually the problem itself.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Anton, and thanks for injecting some real kind of hope in there as well. And good luck with your A levels. We're so pleased that you were able to take some time out to share those thoughts with us. We're going to zoom out a bit now to look at some of the research evidence from educators. And so I'd like to introduce Jess Newberry le Vay, who will tell us more about her research into the reality of experience in the classroom. And Jess is very well qualified to do this because she's a senior researcher in the child and adolescent psychiatry team at the University of Oxford. And she's also part of Climate Cares, which is a global initiative which works to understand and respond to the links between the climate crisis, mental health, and well-being. And she'll be talking about the findings of the recently completed Compass research project that was led by Climate Care Centre at Imperial, with support from Anna Freud and Force of Nature, which was also funded by the Robert Hoe Foundation. And so, Jess, I think you've got some slides, so I will hand over to you.
Thank you so much, Caroline. It's really wonderful to be here. Hopefully you can see my screen.
Looks like it's just about to come. Perfect.
We're in business, great.
Yeah.
So the Compass project is a research project. We're really aiming to understand how education can empower every student and educator with the knowledge, skills, agency, and emotional resilience for a rapidly changing world. Over the past year, we've been working with around 250 students and educators in schools and colleges and universities in England, focusing on 16 to 29-year-olds. And we've been bringing this together in research across group discussions, an online survey, workshops. And all this work is led together with our amazing youth advisors, you just heard from Anton, amazing educator advisors, and a group of advisors of others working across the sector, including the Climate Majority Project and quite a few others on this call. What we've been aiming to do is to understand what's happening now in terms of how mental health, emotional resilience is being embedded into climate education, what students and educators want education to look like, and what are the practical actions that can help drive change. So where are we now? We heard that only 15% of students in schools and colleges feel their education is preparing them for a future in a changing climate. We heard that climate education can feel disempowering and disconnected from young people's own realities, from solutions, and from practical opportunities to get involved in climate action. Students who said they do learn about climate change, and we had many who said they didn't, said that there are often opportunities to speak about emotions and mental health. But when this does happen, it's often informal, it's kind of one-off conversations with a teacher or with peers rather than something which feels really formally embedded into their education. And the majority were not having any space to explore emotional responses to climate change. And these experiences are driving both distress, but also disengagement. We heard that nearly 3/4 of educators are very or extremely worried about climate change, and nearly 40% said that this worry is affecting their daily lives. We also heard that this worry is made worse by a lot of the challenges that are holding back change in the sector, like lack of time, lack of funding, lack of support for educators, and lack of prioritisation and visible leadership on both climate change and mental health in the sector. Educators talked about wanting to teach about climate change, but fearing, things like setting off chain reactions of concern among students, initiating feelings like shame or guilt among students, and this being a barrier to having these conversations. We heard about a really broad range of different emotional responses, not just distress and overwhelm, but also denial and disengagement. And we heard about current mental health support systems not always being fit for purpose in the context of climate change. So we had a really strong need for change. But we also heard that a really powerful vision of what things can be and how things can change. And we heard that students and educators were ultimately really aligned in what they wanted that vision to look like. This quote is from a school student, which I think really captures a lot of the actions and the changes that we heard from students and educators. The student talked about creating safe spaces for open dialogue to validate students' feelings, connecting climate change to local relevant issues, and adopting systems thinking approaches to provide holistic understandings of climate education, and prioritising outdoor education to strengthen connection to nature. And these actions came alongside many other really critical areas like resourcing, support and training for educators, integrating climate change across the curriculum in ways that can build emotional resilience, and sharing climate solutions as well as climate problems. So we heard that the actions and change that students and educators want to see is really clear, but also so much of this is already happening in practice. We heard so many examples of what's working well, and it's really exciting that we're going to go on and hear some amazing case studies shortly. What we heard is often what's working well can be happening in small pockets or one-off initiatives that are being driven by really dedicated staff, dedicated students, but currently this isn't feeling really deeply or consistently embedded into education, as we well know. We also heard that a lot of the initiatives that are having multiple benefits across mental health, wellbeing and climate education often aren't being designed in this way to have such wide-ranging benefits. So we might be missing opportunities to be really capturing the full ripple effects of existing practices, whether that's things like building community, fostering belonging, the benefits of nature connectedness. So I think what we're really exploring is how we can use this research to strengthen the case for why we should be investing in this research and building on what's already being put into practice. So what Climate Courage Schools is doing is really connecting what's already happening, sharing it is really, really needed. And we need to be including the links between climate education, mental health and emotional resilience and how we measure success. That was a real whistle-stop tour of some of the key things that are coming out of our research. We're publishing our report in the middle of February. And it's really exciting for this to be part of the work that Climate Courage Schools is doing, because it really responds to the needs and the desires that we're hearing in the research, putting it into action. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jess. And it's been so brilliant for us to make this connection with your work, because it absolutely provides that evidence base for everything that the Climate Courage campaign is building on. So thank you so much for demonstrating that that case is incredibly strong, and that there's just such a disconnect between a system that doesn't really allow for this teaching to happen. And yet I think you said nearly or over 40% or around 40% of teachers care so much about climate change that is literally affecting their day-to-day lives. So there is much to be done. I want to introduce now Emma Gillingham for a further response. Emma is a principal climate change scientist at the UK Health Security Agency, which is an executive agency of the Department of Health and Social Care. She led the agency's recently published thematic assessment report called Climate Change and Mental Health. And I think, Emma, you have some slides as well, so we would love to hear your reflections, please. Thank you.
Thanks, Caroline. Hopefully my slides are coming through.
Yeah, they're there.
Perfect. Great. Thank you very much, and good evening, everyone. It's brilliant to be here. So as Caroline said, I work in the Centre for Climate and Health Security at the UK Health Security Agency. And back in November, we published our report on climate change and mental health. And within our report, what we did is we undertook a systematic literature review where we looked at published papers which link mental health outcomes to climate change, as well as papers that describe interventions to protect mental health from climate change. And then within our assessment, we carried out a confidence assessment so that we could say whether we had high, moderate or low confidence around the statements that we were making. So this is similar to things that the IPCC, so the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, do in their reports. Let me just move my slides forward. So this slide, sorry, I should have moved the slides on first, but this slide gives you an overview as to what the report looks like. First of all, we looked at the impacts and pathways, and then we looked at the some interventions. And so in our report, I'm sure you'll all be unsurprised to hear, we found that climate change is already negatively impacting our mental health. And we identified several population groups who are most at risk of these mental health outcomes. And you can see these are the main themes from our report, which you can see on the screen. And one of our key groups that was identified were children and young people. And we found that a negative awareness of climate change was greatest amongst our younger populations. And this could be driven by several reasons, including things such as a perceived lack of ability to take action or to make household choices, such as who is the minister in charge, or whether or not the house buys sustainable products, as well as the very real feeling that projected impacts of climate change are being seen and will continue to be seen during their lifetime. We found evidence around how important communicating climate change to children and young people is, something I'm sure I don't need to tell anybody on this call about. And the evidence that we looked at suggests that increased levels of eco-anxiety in relation to social media stories and negative news coverage, as well as environmental education, can contribute to our young people feeling overwhelmed and feeling worried, particularly when they are not provided with adequate space to learn about actions that can be taken, or where there is a lack of support to help them deal with their feelings around this. But there is some good news. It's not all bad news. We found that there are things that we can do to protect our children and young people's mental health from climate-related events. So we found that school-based programs that occur after extreme weather events, so like the flooding that we've seen today, these can result in improvements in more clinically diagnosed conditions such as post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, and anxiety. Importantly, one thing that we did find was that there was no evidence identified in scientific literature on effective training programs for teachers and educators to communicate about climate change in ways that support mental health and build resilience rather than increase anxiety. And this really highlights a gap within the scientific evidence. And although I said that we didn't find this in the scientific literature, we did receive some really positive case studies. So this slide here shows all of the different elements of the report, and Appendix 3 focuses on UK case studies. And we received some case studies which described provision of support for teachers and educators. And these are things such as climate staff rooms, which Louise will talk about later, which provide spaces for teachers and educators to discuss issues around providing climate education, as well as a Sustainables Academy, which provide resources for educators to equip them with knowledge, experience, and strategies in this area. This new resource that we've seen today from Climate Courage Schools is another key example of brilliant work going on to provide resources and equip educators with the tools and strategies to provide climate education, whilst also building resilience and, very importantly, good mental health and well-being for children and young people, and also the educators. It's fantastic to see the work that's going on, and particularly as these are some of the gaps that we've identified within the report and they're already being addressed. And so in UKHSA, we really look forward to keeping up to date on discussions and progressing work in this area. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Emma. That was really, really helpful. And again, there's another kind of bit of the jigsaw in terms of the overall picture of why this issue is so important and why there are still so many gaps. But Emma, you did mention case studies, and in fact, that's where we're going to move on to next, because this next part of our session is going to be an opportunity to introduce you all to some of the educators who are really featured as part of the Climate Courage Schools case study library, which is also being launched, or in fact was launched yesterday. So you've got the film, but then we've also got this library of positive case studies, which we hope will inspire others to see what can be done. Because while our film kind of really demonstrated the problem, this is our opportunity to start demonstrating some of the ways forward. And obviously we're hoping to add to them over the course of the coming year. So teachers and schools around the country who understand the moral imperative for our young people to be better served by their education are already, fortunately, taking matters into their own hands. Could I just ask people to stay muted, please? Otherwise, it's really hard. Could everybody just check if they're muted, please? Thank you. The case study project is, in a sense, an attempt to showcase some of this best practice in order to inspire others and to show the government what could be possible if schools had better funding, better support, and more direction on this issue. So all of these speakers have introduced a whole host of amazing work in their schools, which sadly they won't be able to do anything like justice to in the very short amount of time that we're giving them. So we would encourage you, as well as obviously engaging with this next section of the webinar, also do please go to our website where you can read the case studies in full. But as I say, each of them will provide a short reflection on their work and an example of its effects to give you some insights. So as we have this conversation, do please put your own questions in the chat and we'll come to them very shortly. But first up, I'm going to ask each of our 4 educators to spend just 2 minutes talking about one thing that they've done and what the impact was that it had. And so the first person I'm going to come to is Tina Farr, who is co-head teacher at St Ebb's Primary School in Oxford. It's a role she shares with Claire Wiles, who sadly couldn't be here today, but we're delighted to have Tina with us. And I would love to give you the floor for a couple of moments.
Thanks very much, Caroline. Hi, everybody. It's really lovely to be here and to be able to speak, a privilege to be able to speak to so many people. I'm going to talk about something that's more indirect, and that's about the underpinning culture that I think is really helpful and necessary to make work like this possible. So I'm talking about a culture of being seen, heard and valued, where there's true trust and where people are able to be vulnerable and not fearful. So we can want that for children, we can want it desperately, and I'm sure everybody on this call does, but first we have to think about our staff. So what I've learned is that in order to be able to have these conversations, staff need to feel trusted themselves. And one of our teachers a couple of months ago said to me, all I wanted was to be trusted. The way you trust us is palpable. And there's something so deeply meaningful in that. And the tool that I want to share that we use to create that trust, because the staff have to feel it first if we've got any chance of them wanting or knowing how to create it in their classrooms. So every time we have a training session, we always sit in a circle, we always check in, we never interrupt each other. And people share, yes, they share positive stories of things that have happened, but they also share when they're feeling vulnerable and when things are hard. We solve problems together, so we can pose a big issue or a big question, and we discuss with each other, and we create a safe place where we can listen to each other. I know this is going well when the staff don't look at me for affirmation that they might have said something good or not, where they look at each other and the conversation is generative and it grows from there. So the point I'm trying to make is that we have to give our staff a clear felt experience of being trusted themselves by the leadership of the school. And what we've seen is then they are much more willing to hold those kinds of spaces that are necessary for the children in their classes. And that's the end of my introduction. Thank you, Caroline.
Fantastic. And I'm so sorry to have to condense down what sounds like an amazing amount of experience into a very short period. But I think you've given us a real taste, as you say, of the importance of trust and of holding that space and how that can absolutely, model exactly that kind of atmosphere and tone to be had in the classroom as well. Thank you. Next up, we are going back to Sarah Dukes, the Chase School in Malvern, which is a secondary and sixth form.
Thank you. So I'm sustainability lead. I'm also English teacher, and I teach a bit of art as well. So the main thing we've been doing, or the one thing I'm going to talk about, we declared a climate emergency, very much student-led in 2019, and then a lot of the teachers, we felt that until it's explicitly on the national curriculum, then we use the flexibility of the national curriculum. So we will teach the same skills, but we'll shift the content. So we'll have a climate content and a nature content. We are working very quickly to green up our curriculum as much as possible, which is really difficult when you have very different kind of conflicting priorities from Ofsted and from the government. But in a nutshell, we've been looking at changing MFL units, so lots of nature units, sustainable travel units, lots in art, upcycling, sustainable materials, focusing on a man's relationship with nature. English is a gift. English, we see the students often once a day, so we have a lot more time than some of the other subjects, being a cool subject. And it's brilliant. So for literature, we can view text through a climate lens. Lots of the set poems, for example, deal with relationships with nature. We've got nature as a setting. We've got the Industrial Revolution, for example, in Christmas Carol. We've got, even when I was teaching Lord of the Flies as COP was happening again, and it reminded me, we started talking about Simon's meetings, don't we just love meetings? And then at the end of the novel, the whole island is burning, so it's just a perfect metaphor. I think one of the things English allows us to do in relation to the things we've been talking about this evening is it offers time for reflection, which can be really crucial for students. So we've changed our class reader, one of our class readers, really nice simple thing you can do, just something that focuses on the climate crisis. And then of course we have time for personal reflection, personal writing, as well as discussion time, which reminded me of something that Jess Newberry was talking about. We can formalise that discussion time so that students have the time and the space. I think I've run out of time, but there's so much we can do, particularly as well, we can start working together across subjects too.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Sarah. And I do feel mean for cutting everyone off just when you're getting going, because there are some fantastic insights into what you're doing here. And I love the way you're using English, and I'm a bit biased as an English graduate myself, but absolutely, I think there is so much opportunity within the English curriculum to have, as you say, that time for reflection and the time for discussion. So thank you so much for sharing that. We are now going to go to Dorset, and we're going to go to Margot Cox, who is a former geography teacher at Dumpton School in Wimborne in Dorset, and that was an independent school for age 2 to 13. Hopefully,
That's
Margot.
right. Very good evening, everybody. It's an absolute privilege to be here, listening to all these brilliant things that are going on. Really quickly, my approach to sustainability education really was to try and focus on two things. Firstly, collaboration, so that the feeling of not being alone and the feeling of having combined impact, and looking at sustainability really and the climate emergency through from a safeguarding perspective. So basically, we would never, safeguarding was not something that we talked about a great deal in the past. It was something that was sort of on the fringe. And certainly it is not the responsibility just of our DSLs, it is everybody's responsibility. So my feeling and the approach that I took was to try and get sustainability in my school viewed in the same way. Second thing was, I don't believe in hiding from the realistic facts, which is really tricky in terms of gauging your students' responses. And this is where teachers are incredibly valuable and should feel really confident. Actually, we know our students better than anybody else does. We can read a room and we naturally support in all sorts of ways all the time. And I think that dealing with difficult things like the climate crisis in a similar way that we deal with, sex education and awkward topics as well, we can be well equipped to do that. If we don't deal honestly and realistically with facts, all that happens is we are diverting any eco-anxiety to a later date, and that is building. So the third thing is to normalise and make sustainability language really, really familiar. Familiarity makes things feel safer, and safety tends to initiate action. And the biggest thing, this comes from a really selfish perspective, actually, in managing my own growing anxiety as a geography teacher and somebody who just couldn't let this go. I channel my emotions into action. I left the classroom at Christmas to be a sustainability consultant for schools. And I found I developed an approach within my prep school that had sort of 3 strands. It was learn, do, and become. So like Sarah, embedding sustainability into all routines, all decision-making, all language across every subject in the curriculum. There are ways and means of doing that. It's not quite as difficult. little steps as you might think. And the do part is the action. So rather than this being something that just engages a really dedicated eco team or eco committee in your school, the action relates to sustainable development goals that are relevant within our area, within Dorset, the ones the children engage with. And every child in the school undertakes meaningful local action, whether that is going on to local land outside the school and planting trees as a whole school, whether it is, by geography field trips always had a sustainability element in, whether children gave back to the environment in some way. I'm going to stop talking now because I think I'm running out of time, and if I keep going, I think I'll just railroad away. But there are, really, I think if you don't face things, you can't change them. Not everything that we do face can be changed. It's not me that said that. But yeah, I think safeguarding, honest and realistic, and then using your established safeguarding and pastoral tools that you have. You might use ruler, for example, in your school, using those to manage any anxiety that comes up, but making things familiar makes them feel safer.
Thank you so much, Margot. That was incredibly helpful. And I love what you said about safety, about how safety is the place from where action can come. And I think that's something that we've been talking a lot about within the Climate Courage campaign. So thank you so much for that. The conversation in the chat is just wonderful. I just love, there are so many synergies and so many connections being made. It's wonderful. I don't really want to interrupt it by reminding you to put questions in there as well. But we've got one more person to hear from before we get to some questions. So do start thinking about some of those. And let me introduce to you our last educator. This is Elena Langthorne, who is a senior lecturer in teacher education at the University of Worcester. So Elena, we would love to hear from you.
Thanks, Caroline, and thanks everybody. Yes, starting with gratitude for all of those beautiful connections that are emerging in the chat with people here from New Zealand, Austria, Hereford, up to Dumfries, all of you active eco-educators who are already doing the work. Thank you so much. I'm just delighted. And of course, the Climate Majority Project and this project of Climate Courage Schools and the wonderful film. I'm going to share with you the work I've been doing, one of the things I've been doing at the University of Worcester to try and support our pre-service teachers, those that are undertaking their initial teacher training. There's an ITT ECF curriculum that we're given by the Department for Education. How do we prepare our teachers for becoming, here at Worcester, I'm involved predominantly in the secondary programme, and there is, as you can imagine, no mention whatsoever of our ecological, of our climate crises on that document. And Teacher Tap did a survey, I think in 2022, highlighting that, a huge proportion of teachers, over 70%, feel unprepared. So I have been delivering here for the last 4 years an optional module, an enhancement activity, a 12-hour module called Education in Climate Emergency. And when I even suggested this, the title for it, Education in Climate Emergency, there were questions raised. It was a bit too scary. Maybe we shouldn't call it that. Maybe we should call it Education for Sustainable Development. And I had to find my corner, but I did, because it's not that. This is Education in Climate Emergency. And it's an opportunity for teachers from all different subjects. So geographers very often carry the burden of this because there's explicit permission in their curriculum to do something on it. But this is open for trainees from all subjects, psychology, modern foreign languages. In the first year, I had just 7 trainees, and they were mostly geographers who felt that they needed to go deeper. And for the last 2 years, I've had a full cohort. I've had full sign-ups at sort of 30, and they're from every subject, psychology, science, and we explore deeply their own personal philosophy, their own opportunities in the classroom. We undertake our carbon literacy training. We do a collaborative project in the community. So last year we held an Earth Day here in Worcester, where each of the students were involved in offering activities for the community. And in terms of how it's been reviewed by them, we of course have to do sort of assessments and reviews with them at the end of the course. And things that have emerged from them are the sense of solidarity that it brings, opening up this space to have conversations with each other, that it's felt like therapy for them to be doing this together, that they feel they have increased levels of confidence in tackling and having these conversations in classrooms, and that, you know, the huge diversity now in the range of students that are attending from lots of different PGC cohorts speaks volumes. But the most important message that I get from them is that they feel that this is for all teachers. This is for all, for primary, for secondary. This shouldn't be an option. This should be compulsory for everybody. And I'd like to let you know, I'm part of USET, the University Council for Educating Teachers, and we have a sustainability sort of subgroup. And this is just the work that's happening here at the University of Worcester. There are a number of other case studies that we've collected from around the UK, and we will be publishing a journal with the National Association of Environmental Educators a bit later in the year, which highlights how different initial teacher education institutions are driving this work forward without the change to the curriculum the Department for Education give us. Thank you.
Fantastic, Elena. Thank you so much. That's again really inspiring. And I love the fact that you stuck to your guns when it came to what you're going to call it. So instead of allowing it to be fobbed off under sustainable development, it's going to be climate emergency, as it should be.
We've declared an emergency. It had to have emergency in the title.
Exactly. Wonderful. Thank you. Okay, so we are now going to open up for questions from the floor, but just to give them a little bit more time to come up with some, I'm going to abuse my position of chair and just ask a couple myself. But I suppose to any or all of you, it'd be interested to know what you found the biggest challenge was in terms of moving forward from this, and was there anything that kind of surprised you at all in terms of the response from your colleagues or from pupils or from parents? Yeah, anybody who wants to jump in on any of those, I'd be interested to hear.
Shall I start? Oh, sorry.
Go on, Sarah, you go.
I've found that since even just the past kind of 5 or so years, it's getting easier to embed. It's getting better received from parents. When we first declared our climate emergency, one of our students did a quite powerful video, and our head teacher, who's a geography teacher, luckily, he had to field a few quite negative, we put it on our school website, and he had to field quite a few negative parental responses, worrying about the facts as well as the kind of emotional impact it might cause. And now I think parents have, there is a general support. I would say the biggest barrier, time and time again, is the lack of time, and the lack of time for teachers and for support staff and for space within CPD timetabling. That just comes down to the lack of priority from government and the lack of priority from Ofsted. There's no accountability. It's still seen as an add-on, and that's really difficult because you do have willing teachers, and you have teachers that want to embed it into their lessons, and you have students that want to talk about it and want to hear about it and want to move things forward. And schools very much should be those, the catalyst for the change in the world. They're real places. Often they're seen as kind of getting ready for the real world, but we are the real world. So I think time is the biggest barrier, time and time again.
Really interesting. Thanks. Tina, you're going to come in.
I was just going to say, one of the surprises for me was how naturally it came into our curriculum. And I think it was kind of accidental, because we started writing our curriculum by asking the teachers, what do you want for your children by the end of the year? So we put the national curriculum to one side for a minute, and obviously we have incorporated what's in the national curriculum, so we have to, of course. But just by asking them that question, they naturally came up with, well, we want the children to care about the earth, we want them to care about nature, we want them to care about the planet. So we ended up with a sustainability theme because that's what our teachers told us they cared about. So I kind of feel weird taking credit for our curriculum, because it's only because we asked that question that it came about. So that was a really lovely surprise. And then one of the challenges quite soon after, because we ended up with quite a few sustainability projects in our first our first round of writing the curriculum, was that one or two staff who were a bit more anxious about it said the projects felt a bit heavy and they were a bit worried about the weight of, I mean, it's exactly what this is about tonight, isn't it? But then I think that was more to do with not understanding the intent of our curriculum of hope, and so that caused us to really listen to their concerns, but then to go back into, well, the purpose of the curriculum of hope is that we teach children about transformative, diverse individuals who have made a difference, who are doing amazing things on the planet. So we expose them to good news stories, which we're often not exposed to, are we? That's again one of the major problems systemically. So it enabled us to tackle that. It stopped us from saying, "Oh, we won't do it then," which would have been the easiest response at that stage. But we knew intrinsically we had to. So yeah, that was a challenge, but it turned into something really good in the end because we emphasised the hope aspect of it, of studying people who are making a difference.
Fantastic. Thank you. Love that.
Can I just add something to that? I think the thing that I found most difficult is actually maintaining continuity with things, where, I tended to do quite a lot of things initially without asking permission. I just sort of did them and then told leadership about them when they were working. And they were, oh, that's good. And I kind of had to go into it that way. But one of the things that, if you are working so hard in this space doing with your students, is that when you bring something in and there is a behaviour change within the school that's initiated by the children, it's fantastic. And then about 6 to 9 months down the line, colleagues or leadership are doing things like handing out lollies in plastic wrappers at sports day or something when you've just achieved plastic free status or something like that. And it's all those little things that can just be so difficult to get people to get it and to get people to keep, that there's all, you can mark it if you like and be and celebrate a behavior change and initiative, but it's keeping that going and then building from it that other colleagues find really difficult to kind of be along with you. Some people just have this in their heart and soul, and I kind of feel like for me it's easy because I live and breathe it all the time. But when you don't, everybody can make mistakes. But I think that continuity and just really getting a school community to accept and realise that it is a behaviour change going forward with no questions asked, is quite difficult. That's been a real frustration for me in school. It's getting better, but it's something that I think just comes from just relentlessly being positive and also a little bit mean and calling people out on it from time to time with a bit of humour.
Great, thank you. Elena, I don't know if you wanted to contribute to this one or...
I have to wave my arms to get the lights to come back on. There we go. I'm being as climate conscious as I can. I'm sitting in the dark. I've just been listening to what everyone else is saying, and just so again, my heart is just filling up with all of these things. I think my head's moved into carrying on with the kind of emergency headspace. Moved into this. We're on the verge. We're on a sort of tipping point of things changing for educators in terms of what's emerged from the curriculum and assessment review. As part of our Geography Teacher Educators Conference at Manchester Met University this weekend, we had a roundtable talking about our geography responsibilities or opportunities or feeling this kind of sense of burden. And actually, we're acknowledging that it's everybody, of course. This is an 8 billion people concern. And the national emergency briefing that took place in November, for those of you that are familiar with it, of course, explored 10 different topics with brilliant scientists in health emergency, in tipping points, in climate, weather extremes and nature. And I think this community is the community that helps to disseminate and drive those screenings forward, where there'll be a distilled film version released in mid-April, I think is the plan from the National Emergency Briefing. And there's such a lot of energy and power in this space that I'm just feeling really positive in this moment. Thank you, Caroline.
Thanks so much. Okay, so now I can see loads of questions that have come in. So I'm going to put some of these questions to you, but don't feel, all 4 of you, that you have to answer all of the ones. So it's just ones that feel most relevant. But this first one is music to my ears. It's from Layla Take. who says, it feels like the general way to focus is on teaching climate knowledge rather than adaptation skills. What examples of the latter can the speakers share? And just by way of explaining why that is music to my ears, one of the other projects of the Climate Majority Project is the so-called SAFER campaign, which is strategic adaptation. And one of the things we're trying to really promote is the idea of getting adaptation and resilience and communities working together with agency higher up the agenda, as well as decarbonisation, certainly not instead of it, but just saying that the adaptation piece needs far more priority. And I just wonder if any of you have any experience of that kind of practical community resilience building, as well as the kind of education about the science of what's happening on climate change. Thank you. I'm very weird with the microphone. Can we come back to you in a second, and can we go to Elena first and hope that something will sort itself with the microphone? Sorry, but it just...
Margot, it was all staticky. I don't know what's happening there. Thank you. So just to highlight that we explore the competencies for ESD that were released by the UN as part of their SDGs global goals. It's in their learning objectives book. So we're exploring, first of all, what those things mean. What does it mean to be competent in ESD? But in terms of the skills that we're actually building, so they have an awareness of what those skills and competencies might need to be in the young people that they work with. And then as part of their carbon literacy training, they are urged to make a pledge for an action that they will do individually, and then a community, a collective action that they will do together. So they have to try and build in those competencies, those ESD competencies, into the work that they do. Predominantly, we're urging them to try and do it in their classrooms with their young people, whilst they can do an individual pledge for something that they do in their own homes and families, which is, of course, valuable. We're leaning towards urging them to try and do something in their classrooms as their individual action, but then especially building a community activity, which again, we're hoping this year that it will take place at our local community and university library, the Hive, and it's all built around Earth Day. So building those kind of team building and community values building opportunities. Thank you.
Perfect. Lovely, thank you. And so sorry, Margot, let's hope your your microphone's better. So sorry. Maybe I don't know if you go away and come back. Maybe that's what you were saying, but it's just very staticky, as Elena said, so we can't actually hear. So moving on. So a question from Margaret McIntosh. How do we respond when people's students remind us that Trump is a climate change denier, that he says drill, 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 that airports will be being expanded to accommodate more flights and so on? So I suppose this is a question really about the kind of cognitive dissonance on the one hand, going to school and hearing the reality of climate change, and then, you know, hearing very different messages coming from elsewhere. Sarah, I saw your hand.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is really important, because actually, when the more time you kind of spend in this field, and the more you kind of strip back the essential problem, we actually need. It's a values change that we need, but we need a values change for everybody. So it's a values change for survival. And I think actually, whilst some teachers feel that it's too political to talk about climate change or Trump, we very much need to be really honest. We need to be really genuine, and we need to when they're coming up with these kind of stark facts, we need to agree with them, and then we need to kind of shift that conversation. It reminds me of something Margot was saying. We often, you know, we do these really good things in schools, things start to move, and then something else happens and it feels we take a couple of steps back. So for example, in our school, we've just had this massive push on booklets, and so we're printing on so much paper, and it just feels really sad. And so what we have to do is kind of have those discussions with the students and get them thinking about, okay, so what can we do? What's the best action we can take? And so it also links, I think somebody else was talking about that idea of, you know, not wanting to put blame on the students. It's not their fault, and often it's not our fault. And often adults quite rightly feel, well, why should I be changing everything about my life when we have Trump, when we have, you know, countries that have, you know, that are wasting electricity, wasting energy, wasting food. And so I think it's about having those conversations very openly and then turning that to action, making sure it's the right action. And again, kind of recognizing that schools can take real action for real purposes. So for example, writing and holding leaders to account, trying to kind of divert the real letters that we're writing in class so that we can send them away, and start kind of showing students that actually their voice matters and their kind of confusion is real and valid, because we're feeling the same confusion and the same upset and the same kind of weird dystopian I don't know what, like horror. And just trying to turn that into something that becomes meaningful, and also letting them know that there is hope and not everybody feels the same way, and that there are lots of people who are not happy with Trump as well.
Thank you so much for that. And I think you've kind of also answered Rich's question, which was around how do we teach climate truth without transferring the emotional burden of a broken system onto children, which is a really big issue. But I think you were beginning to touch on that there too. Did anyone else want to come in on this one, Tina or Elena? I hope we can get Margot back. I feel I've now banished her to the to the outer wilderness, and I hope she can get back in. Anything from you two on this one, or shall I move on? I've got plenty more. Tina.
I was just going to add again, I think it's a wider, so that these discussions aren't just an add-on, it's a wider cultural case in the school. So I use assemblies a lot just to drop in examples of where one person has made a difference, and talking about the collective agency, even when it's not linked to climate change. So I think, having one of our values is we've got curiosity, courage, and connection, and they turned out to be three really powerful words that were really crucial to this work. But I think just having that culture where you talk about uncertainty, we talk about, the children are really familiar. Sometimes they draw it for me with a diagram that we've got where we've said that we're taught to expect that life goes like this, that your day is going to go like this. And if you go into each day expecting that, you're going to end up disappointed. You've got to go in expecting it to be up and down, and sometimes there's highs and sometimes there's low. So we try and normalize that way of life with children, rather than buying into that the way that schools are run is very much expecting everything to be linear. So we try and buy into the fact that we teach them the fact that life just isn't like that, but not to be upset about it, but it's just a reality, and then you're better prepared to deal with it.
Lovely, thank you. And I'm so delighted to see Margot back. I'm just going to come to Elena on this one, and then we will come to you, Margot.
Thanks, Caroline. I just wanted to highlight the importance of how we're working with our teacher educators, with our trainees, in terms of managing their thinking through factfulness. So, for example, highlighting that we have cognitive traps that we fall into, thinking traps, and them understanding the ways that their brains work to be drawn towards certain information, certain bias. So training our teachers, our pre-service teachers, to be aware of the cognitive instincts that we have and the cognitive traps that we fall into, and the ways to avoid that happening, which we can then share with our pupils by asking the right questions, by sharing the right statistics, by encouraging them to think critically when Trump says drill, baby, drill. What does that mean? Let's look at the information about drilling. Let's find out what's really happening and what other people and other opinions are out there.
Fantastic, thank you. And Mark, I don't know if you can remember what you were going to answer now, but I've got another question to roll into whatever you were going to say, which is around someone saying, is it easier in primary school settings? What do people think? So maybe you could answer that one too.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, the primary school settings. I would say yes. I would say yes. In many ways, because we're not tied by that exam curriculum, and we have a lot more space. And I think younger children, although it can be scary, if you make this really familiar from the start, you stand so much better chance of it being normal, and then therefore it being safer. I think also primary school kids, they're in the palm of your hand. If they're not, we're doing something wrong. So I think that, I would agree with that. But I also think, as I've been a secondary geography teacher as well, so I think that even in secondary, in geography, you can flip your sort of mindset and the way that you teach things. So if you're, you know, looking at a case study or an example, you can look at it from what is the most sustainable way forward in this situation, and then go to what would be the most cost effective, what would be, I think if you, rather than sort of traditionally, you kind of look at, you know, if you're looking at transport, for example, you look at speed and cost and profit, and then, oh, it would be quite nice if it was sustainable as well. If you flip that in your teaching and you prioritize that, so you're teaching your children kind of look at it from what is the most sustainable, could the business afford that? If not, what's the next step down? So that becomes a priority. I think you can work within the constraints of the curriculum a little bit, but yes, I think I have a gift being in prep and primary. Perfect. So I'm going to be quiet now because not everybody's that lucky.
Thank you. Listen, this next question is a challenging one for all of us, I think, not just for teachers, but it's from Ashvi Shah, who says, a challenge I've seen is that students think the climate crisis or environmental problems in the UK can only be tackled by people who have privilege, so white middle-class people, whether it's from seeing people in power or from other factors. What can be done about this? Why is the climate sector in England primarily seen as white? And I think that last question does demonstrate that this is a much bigger question than one solely in our schools, but it's a very, very good question. I don't know if anyone feels like tackling that.
I'm happy to come in on that one, Caroline. Just
thank you.
When we set out to write this curriculum, we thought we had included diverse individuals as role models of people doing good work in the world. And then I read Benny Cara's book on the diverse curriculum and realised that we weren't doing nearly enough. So our teachers we just went back through the whole thing and we said, right, where have we missed opportunities to show people from diverse backgrounds who've done excellent work and making an example of them. And because our projects are based around people in places, and initially too many of them were white, and you know I quickly realized that was we were simply caught up in the institutions that we're in and those power structures that we've experienced. So we just actively combed through it and said, right, who are we missing? And we've now got some really brilliant people that we hadn't realized before, because they weren't, you know, as happens in these situations, they hadn't been highlighted, so they weren't obvious, but we've found them and they're now front and center. So I think we've got to just be really honest in our schools and take that action.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Yes, Sarah.
Just a quick kind of links to that. I think it goes back to that idea of the climate crisis being a real crisis of inequalities and a crisis of social justice, and actually it highlights the massive change that we need within our society globally. And so on the one hand, that's quite really overwhelming. But on the other hand, once we realise that, it can be quite empowering. And I think, again, it comes back to just really trying to be as truthful as possible, and realising that actually all of these differences that we're making are exponentially beneficial. It's not just about one issue that we're trying to tackle here. It's actually a huge number of societal issues that we're tackling. So it's exponentially beneficial. So it's win-win. The solutions are win-win.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you, Eleanor.
Just building social justice into our work where we can in the ITE scheme, not just through the enhancement activity on education and climate emergency, but two texts which have been sort of really useful, being one written by Jeremy Williams called Climate Change is Racist, and the other one by Greenpeace on confronting injustice, racism and the environment emergency. And so just trying to take a bigger, broader social justice look.
Fantastic. Maybe somebody could write those two books down in the chat, because they sound...
I'll do it, no problem.
Thank you very much. They sound really great. Just to tell people that we will finish at 7:45, so we've got another 10 minutes. So I'm minded just to take another couple of questions, and then we've got a couple of more bits we want to do before we end. But just to let you know, if you haven't had your supper yet, we're getting close to the point when you might. So I had a question here, and it would just be interesting to know if anyone has done this. So this is Emma asking that she would love to know if any educators and teachers have engaged with their school nurses on these issues. And I guess she's coming from the perspective of thinking about the emotional overload and the overwhelm, and whether or not there has been any connection made there, which is, yeah, just to see if anyone's got any thoughts about that. Yeah, Eleanor, thank you.
Haven't, and I'm loving your question. Thank you so much for helping us think about a new way of exploring this. What I would highlight is the wonderful speech from Professor Hugh Montgomery at the National Emergency Briefing. It is available online on YouTube, and it's a 13-minute, fantastically concise message that the climate crisis, the climate emergency is a health emergency. He's a brilliant communicator. So if you're looking to get any support or galvanize a community, that could act as a really great starting point. And what I'll do, I'll try and find the link for it and I'll pop it in the chat.
Thank you. I love multitasking. That's great that you can do all of that. Okay, so listen, there's one last question, and I was going to perhaps put it to all of you as a way of kind of summing up. Because some of the people on the call obviously aren't teachers, they're parents or just people who have a real interest in this subject. And there's a question from Annalie, which says, as a parent, how do we go about moving this agenda forward in our school? And obviously that's a question that the Climate Courage campaign is thinking about, you know, how do we move the agenda forward in government and in teacher training and everything. But in terms of individual schools, is there, in your experience, anything that teachers can do, that parents can do rather, to help move this up the agenda? Can I come to you first, Margot, just to go around my, sorry, I was just going around my square.
I'm not sure how appropriate this is, but I was thinking just be a real pain in the neck.
Very appropriate.
I don't know, I think I would, you know, if there really isn't anything going on at all, I would probably put to the school examples that are going on in other schools, and really push and emphasize the benefit to the children. And contact, you know, whoever is leading, here we go, science and geography again. It is not their responsibility entirely, it's everyone's responsibility, but they're quite a good place to start. And I think school leaders will respond better to you approaching them and then offering something they can get hold of and use, rather than just sort of, you know, raising it as an issue and complaining about it. If you go to them with something like a plan for eco schools or some of these initiatives that are working locally in other schools, then that's a really good way to do it. But don't give up. Do not give up. If the schools are not doing it, you must do it.
Perfect. Well said. Thank you. Tina, can I come to you?
Yeah, I mean, I am a school leader, and I'd say, you know, go and speak to the head, but go in with an open, as Margot was saying, you know, go in and say, how can we help? We realise this is huge, but we're all part of the same community. You know, I was wondering about gathering a group of parents who might be able to contribute, and just acknowledge the scale of it, and rather than going in and saying to the school, you know, this is a problem you need to solve, but going in with an open heart, really, and engaging in conversation.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Sarah?
Yes, completely agree. There's a phrase that Eleanor and I use a lot called pester power. Pester power is so important. And I think actually parent pester power is very powerful, and pupil pester power. And I think, yeah, there was a really good talk by the Ministry of Eco Education recently, and they had a parent organisation on there. So there are parent organisations that you can kind of seek out and find. Yeah, offering to help establish an eco committee, offering to help establish a garden or a garden club. Kind of, you know, suggesting that it can go into PSHE or the kind of tutor time program. Like, there are so many really good examples out there now, working towards the green flag, eco schools, yeah, pester power, and finding organisations. There's so many out there now that are really, really good. So and keep going, keep getting it on there, and writing to the government, writing to the climate change committee, writing to, like, getting it explicitly in schools in a formalised way as much as we can.
Perfect. That is exactly what our campaign is trying to do. Eleanor,
if I could add, Fanta, all of these brilliant ideas, but if I could add that schools can be held to account. There was a sustainability strategy published in 2021 that all schools should have a sustainability leader as of December 2025. Just starting with that question with curiosity, who is our sustainability leader in school and what are they doing and how can I help them? And beyond that, I would also urge to ask about school governance. And I've seen on here that we do have a sustainability school governor and suggestions of get involved and become a governor in school so that you can ask those questions. So if they don't have an eco governor, a sustainability governor, then asking how do we get one? What do we need to do to have a school governor? Because then they have to hold the senior leadership to account.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for all of those really practical suggestions. I love it. And to sort of boil them down, it seems to be pester and also offer to kind of be part of the solution rather than just bringing a problem for someone else to solve. So thank you so much for all of that discussion. We could have gone on for much longer, but I won't. I will thank you again. And then I just want to introduce Louise Edgington, who is an educational psychologist, and she has a specialism in climate, and she has been a climate courage advisor, and we all just absolutely love her experience and learning from her. And she's going to speak briefly on an offer of support for educators. So here's something practical from Louise.
Yes, something practical, but something unmeasurable. It's about our inner work and how we feel, and that's really at the core of the campaign. And you know, I found it so nourishing today, hearing all the educators talk with so much passion and knowledge, and all the connections in the chat and all the fantastic ideas. Like, being with people that get this is really important for us as well to keep on doing this work. I say us, I was a teacher, I'm now a psychologist. So yes, I've put in the chat details of an offer that is being offered freely to teachers. It's called Climate Staff Room, but it's really just like a climate cafe, specifically for educators. So where we can get together and talk about these tricky issues, and you know, much of them have been mentioned today. What it's like when there's apathy in the classroom, or you get a bit of pushback from parents or the senior leadership team perhaps, or the system, there not being enough time, all of these things, and really importantly, how we feel about it ourselves. I won't say too much more, but they're on Tuesdays at 4 o'clock. Just feel free to have a look at the dates. It's offered for free. Donations are welcome, but yeah, just come along and see if it's for you. If it's not, that's cool.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. That sounds absolutely brilliant. Okay, so now we are going to ask for one last bit of interaction and engagement from you all. Could you spend a moment helping us with a poll? And I think Tamsin is going to share the poll on screen. There it is. We are looking for ideas for sharing the film and the crowdfunder more widely. We're looking for suggestions for other schools' work that we could highlight in our case studies. And we're looking for suggestions for how we can connect this to work that other organizations are doing. So I realize I'm not quite sure. People are going to be filling those in real time. Is that right? Just now? Yes. Okay, Josephine is saying yes. So if you are able to contribute any thoughts into those questions, that would be wonderful. So let me just begin to say my words of thanks while you're doing that, because I really do want to thank people so much for everything that we've heard today and for all of the really strong engagement in the chat. I can't wait to kind of save that and read it all fully. But in particular to the other teachers who featured in our case study projects that we didn't get a chance to hear from today, but they include Danielle Ware and Sarah Farish, Rafaela Harris, Mark Whitaker, Jim Dees, and Jane Backberg. Thank you also to Sarah Trott, to Claire Murphy, to Tamsin Bishton and Bonnie McRae, and everyone at Spindle Production Studio. Do please get in touch with us if you want to talk about endorsing the Climate Courage Schools campaign, partnering with us, or joining forces in any other way. And I think Josephine and Les are going to put email addresses in the chat if people do want to get more involved. Do please share our video, and I saw a couple of people saying that they missed the video at the very start, so absolutely you can find that on our website, and I'm sure somebody as I'm speaking will be putting that into the links in the chat as well, so you can watch it again and share it, please. We really just do want to get this out to as many people as possible and get people talking about the issue. So put it into your own WhatsApp groups, your family members, your school communities, just share it wherever you can, please. And then no meeting would be complete without asking you to donate to a crowdfunder. As you can imagine, it's cost some money to put the video together and to kind of spread it further. And we would love it if you could support the crowdfunder. I think Josephine's going to put the link in the chat. And our very own Rupert Reed, co-director, co-founder of the Climate Majority Project, I think is going to come and say a few last words about the importance of supporting us if you possibly can.
Yeah, thanks, Caroline. Thanks for a fantastic event. And if you agree with me that this event has been fantastic, then I'm going to urge you to remember events like this don't organize themselves. We've done everything so far that we've done for the Climate Courage campaign with only about £60,000 worth of total funding. That includes, for example, making this film. And if we're going to carry on at the level we've been working at, let alone go further, we need to make £30,000 at least from this crowdfunder, which we are initiating now with this film. So I would love you if you can give us a small or large amount to put something into the crowdfunder. Do it tonight. Don't leave it to another occasion. Do it tonight. The link is going in the chat now. And please also share that as much as possible. A great way to share it is to say, I've given to this crowdfunder. I hope that you might as well. Thank you so much. And this will be a great way that we can really make the most from this amazing film.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Rupert. And thank you again to everybody. I'm sorry it's come to an end and I have made it run on 2 minutes, for which more apologies. We were suggesting that people might post one thing they've learned today in the chat, or one thing they particularly appreciated in the chat. Do remember you can save the chat. I think it's the 3 dots at the top. So if you wanted to do that, you'd be very welcome. But thank you again, I bet, to everybody who took part, to the people from the different schools, but also to all of you. We still have nearly 200 people with us, in spite of the fact that we've gone on for an hour and nearly 20. So big thanks again to everybody, and look out for more communications from the Climate Courage campaign. Thanks so much.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Night.
Good night. Keep going. Pester power. Take care.